Good day, folks. Paul here at the Memoirs of a Farmer Boy channel, podcast channel that is. And this is the 10th day of March, 2024. Memoirs of a Farmer Boy is a platform where we talk about real life experiences of today concerning Revelation 18:4. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues." My goal here is to share things that can possibly bring your journey out of corporate into private, a little more into focus, and help you along the way. So before I get into what I want to talk about today specifically, I want to talk about several things that are very important. First and foremost, everything that we do here at the House of Graber and at Memoirs of a Farmer Boy channel is protected and safeguarded under the laws of nature and nature's God, otherwise known as the courts of heaven, the Ecclesia Court, the highest venue on planet Earth. And our material is subject to and protected by those courts, by the Almighty, in other words, the Almighty Creator, the Divine, whether it's audio, video, or written material, intellectual property, whatever it may be. And regardless of where this material is taken, keep in mind, I cannot control what people do with this information. It's not my job to control other people. What I can tell you is that the data and the material that we put out is designed to be congruent and in alignment with the Almighty Creator, the one true God, our Creator, whom we serve. And so therefore, it is protected by that same Creator wherever it goes, no matter where you take it. And for those that would potentially like to trick the system, people like that only trick themselves and deceive themselves, because there is no such thing as tricking the laws of nature and nature's God. Our material is also protected and safeguarded under the private registered copyright of the House of Graber. So, Memoirs of a Farmer Boy is the channel that I operate on, and there's a couple other very interesting channels that are in the beginning phases in our household. One of them is Torch Phase. Our son Michael, who is a knife maker, he does hand forged knives. So if you can either look that up on YouTube, or I'll put the link in the description below on this video, on this broadcast. Beautiful hand forged knives that he's cranking out, and he's got multiple videos on there now as well. And then also the beautiful woman that I've been married to for over 30 years now, Carol, has started up a channel, Homesteading Made Easy by Memoirs of a Farmer Girl. Okay. Homesteading Made Easy. She is an absolute master when it comes to working in the kitchen, in the garden, all manner of housekeeping. We just got done processing a beef that we raised here on our little, couple acres that we have. So there will be a upcoming video of that process as well. And as she preserves the meat, puts it in cans, some of it went in the freezer, etc. Homesteading Made Easy on YouTube. So there's that. So go ahead, and if you like the material that we're putting out here, Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with others. That's what helps support what we do. Knowing that people benefit from this is my ultimate desire. And if it doesn't line up with where you're at, or you can't use the information, then that's okay. Because we talk about things in a very specific area here on memoirsoffarmerboy.com. Today, I'm going to talk about P.M.As, okay, private membership associations. And I'm going to start with saying something that most of you, I'm sure you've heard this not only once, but many times in your life. If it looks like a duck, and if it walks like a duck, and if it quacks like a duck, it most likely is a duck. Okay. What I mean by that is this: if you have statutory gobbledygook all over your paperwork, and you have statutory terms, and you have statutory codes and titles splattered all over your supposed private paperwork, it's not private. It's subject to the codes and the statutes that you put on there. Now, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying it for what it is. When you rely on those statutes and codes, then those are the only thing you have to rely on. And I'm going to tell you, that's a very, very, very flimsy foundation to stand on, because those codes and statutes are nothing more than man-made rules. They're color of law. They are not law. They are color of law. Okay. They kind of look like they could be law, but they're an imitation. And since they're man-made rules, they could be changed at the drop of a hat. They can be changed, and they do. They do change them and add to them, and come up with new ones all the time. Okay. I know how that works because I grew up in a church like that, where the whole thing operated on man-made rules. If you're a member of what is known as a recognized or an established church, then you're part of an organization that operates on man-made rules, statutory corporate venue. Okay. And if that's where you want to be, then, that's great. If you want to be in God's kingdom and operate in God's kingdom, in the courts of heaven, the laws of nature and nature's God, see, the principles of nature do not change. We could vote on which way is north. We could vote, we could have 5 people, or we could have 5 million vote. 5 million people vote on which way is north. Wouldn't change anything, though. So the laws of nature are consistent and they are true. And if you're into studying how our Creator works, and how the law is in effect, and how you determine the outcome of setting that law in motion, depending on how you set it in motion and by what means and by what intent, the law is always the same. There's a very good book by a gentleman by the name of Thomas Troward. It's called The Law and the Word. It was written, I'd have to go back. It's been a while since I read it, but I think it was written in the 1920s. Thomas Troward, The Law and the Word. And that has some really, really good insight. Now, PMAs, private membership associations. What is a private membership association? Well, I grew up in one that was at the, at this point in time, they have sold their birthright, the Amish church, the what is known as the Old Order Amish Church. How it used to be when I was younger, they incorporated here in Indiana. They incorporated in 2011, actually. And a lot of the people that are members of that organization don't really know what happened. They're oblivious. And the fruits that they are reaping should tell them that there's something wrong, but they don't know. So before that, prior to that, factually speaking, the Amish church, the Old Order Amish, were a private membership association. So in other words, even though now some people, are very deceived about what the Amish do or don't do. I was born and raised in that environment, and I was a member of that cult for 26 years. Okay. And there's some things that they did and maybe still do that are valid and very worthwhile, good practice based on laws of nature. And then there's a lot of things they do that are fake as all get out and based on somebody's opinion of how things should be. And the challenge is they don't know why they're doing it in either case. That's when you do something and you don't know why you're doing it, that can get you in trouble. But the fact is, way back then, we had, they pay taxes on their land and property, and they go through the same red tape that a lot of other people do. We had state IDs, social security numbers, and all that. Went to the accountant, tax guy, at the end of the year and donated a bunch of our money to the IRS, just like most of you do. Now, so in an individual capacity, we were subject class employees of the corporate Babylonian club known as the United States. I guess it's United States Army, USA. But either way, it's a corporate company that we're part of. However, when we gathered in church, when the there was districts, we only grew to a certain number, then we would strike a line somewhere in that district, when we grew to about, I don't know, depending on how many young ones. There was no cut and dried thing, but most districts have anywhere from 20 to 40 families. Now, in the particular community that I grew up in, there's some areas that a district of 50 families is pretty common. It's just a little bit of different way of how many people can they deal with or do they have room for in an average church service, because we gathered in each other's houses. We every time we had got together for church service wasn't always in the same place. There was no corporate, there was no centralized location. There was no registered address for this thing known as the Amish church. The deacon was the point of contact, which as a representative of that private membership association, he, had a mailing address and everything. But this assembly of people got together at one house and then the other throughout the community. And on a given Sunday, there would be many, many different assemblies, districts. So What I want to point out about this assembly, when we went and we assembled together, whether it was on a Sunday or during the week for other matters, we stepped out of our individual capacity. We stepped out of our individual capacity and, excuse me. And then we stepped into our capacity as a member of a private assembly. This was a private assembly. There was no registration or licensing or incorporation of this assembly. It was a private assembly. And in that sense, we were doing things the way it should have been done. It was private. And it was outside of the corporate venue of the USA. And when this private assembly made a decision, we counseled. Everybody that was a member of the church was a member of the council. If you were in attendance and there was an issue to counsel about, then you were part of the council. If you were not in attendance and there was an issue to counsel about, then the ones that were there counseled. And just because you weren't there doesn't mean like you just didn't participate in the council. It didn't change the outcome. In other words, you couldn't go back later and say, hey, wait a minute, it was your choice to not be there. So it was okay. It's just how it worked. But typically there was, at least 80 to 90% of all the members were there. So you still had by far a majority vote in this council session. But this council session was made up of members of a private body, a private assembly, a private membership association. And so therefore, it was very, very effective. And a lot of people over the years outside, and some of the people even within the Amish church do not understand why this has historically been so, but if you know anything about the Amish, or you've heard people outside of the Amish community, not members, but were familiar with the ongoings, they talk about how the Amish can, they can do some pretty radical stuff, and the police and the courts won't get involved. Well, they have been getting involved a lot more since 2011, because in 2011, the Amish of Indiana incorporated as a 501c3 corporate, what I call a corporate country club. They're just like all the other churches now. They're a state church. And so if some whack job gays came around, two men wanting to marry each other, or two women, because there's people that do that stuff, and can't figure out which gender they are because, I don't know, whatever. And if those people would come to an Amish bishop here in Indiana and ask him to marry them, and he refused, they could take him to court and win, because he's a state agent, because they're a 501c3 assembly now. They're run by the state statutes because they sold their birthright, is what they did. So that has changed, but that's what a private membership association, that's what they were when we were still part of that. I was a member for 26 years, and got booted out of that organization in 2012. And the bishop who, the one that was bishop of the district that we were part of, he said, because I confronted them about due process, they never use due process. I said, why do you not follow Matthew 18? If you want to know what due process looks like, you go read Matthew 18. It'll tell you right there, very clear language. And I kept confronting them about this. And finally he said, well, when it's a church matter, Matthew 18 does not apply. And I discovered later why that is. It's because they are incorporated under the state of Indiana, Secretary of the State of Indiana, as a 501c3 corporation. And they are no longer a private membership association. They are a corporation, incorporated under their articles of incorporation are, I think, maybe 2 or 3 pages long, but it's they're incorporated subject to some kind of nonprofit corporate entity act of 1990, whatever it is. It's relatively recent, it's not that long, and then I go and I pull that document, and it's got 30 pages, I think 31, 33 pages, something like that, of statutes that these people have subjected themselves to by incorporating as a 501c3. Now, I don't suppose that all of these statutes are being enforced, but some attorney, some barfly, the ones that Christ said, woe unto you, because they're doomed, as a group, he doomed all of them. Woe unto you. There's a terrible judgment coming for them. Not because they're bad people necessarily to begin with. It's because they took an oath to an entity that is doomed. Woe unto you. That's what Christ said. And so those guys could pick any one of those statutes and enforce them because they've said, we agree to these statutes, 30 pages of them. It's kind of crazy. So they switched from being a private membership association by the stroke of a pen and one transaction and one registry with the state of Indiana. They switched from that to being a state-run corporation. And most people in that church didn't have a clue then, and a lot of them still don't. So if you want to have a private membership association, now we do our banking through a private ministry held in foreign trust. Some people use what's called a P.M.A, specifically private membership association, even though our ministry is also a private membership-based ministry. And even a trust, a private trust, you're either a member of that trust or you're not in some capacity. You might be the trustee or you might be beneficiary, etc. But there's one thing that holds true for all of them. If you want it to be private, then that has to be expressed on paper. You have to let the world know. And if you are using codes and statutes to write your trust, ministry, P.M.A, or whatever it is, then you're subjecting yourself to those codes and statutes. I would never do that, not intentionally. not knowingly. Um, when I write a trust, or when I write up a ministry or a private membership association, if you read any of those, and there's been judges and attorneys that have read them, I'm just going to say that the ones that have a reading comprehension above second grade, there was no question to them whether it was private or not. As a matter of fact, they were so convinced about what that trust said that they ended the case, immediately started making moves to end the court case that was going on. And that's, I'm just saying, there's not necessarily a cut and dried way that you have to do trusts or ministries or P.M.A.s or copyrights. But if you want them to be private, that has to be expressed. Because if you leave it open to an assumption, like you don't really, if you're not really clear about what's going on, or you throw some statutes in there, then the assumption will be made that you're operating in statutes. And most people don't rebut those presumptions and assumptions because they don't even know that they made the mistake in the first place. And then when they end up in court is when they realize they made a mistake. But now the question is, where was the mistake made and how do I correct it? It's very challenging at that point. I don't recommend going to those courts. My preference would be to establish myself in a way that it's not profitable for the state to take me there. I've been there way more than I wanted to, and it was because I made mistakes. I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know what the tricks and traps were. And one of the mentors I used to work with back in 2012, he asked this question many times. He said, when you're going across a minefield, landmines, if you're, I was never part of the military, but if you're military or ex-military, you'll know what I'm talking about better than I do. Landmines, things that are designed to kill people, is what I understand. He said, if you're going across the field of landmines, how many mines can you step on and safely get to the other side? Well, the fact is that there's the comparison might be kind of pathetic, but that's what these courtrooms are, and these procedures and statutes and codes and all the stuff that they pile up, piles and piles and piles of stuff. SMU, stuff made up, is what it is. And it's word trickery. It's word trickery. Be very clear about what you're putting on paper. Putting more on paper isn't going to help a thing if you don't know why you're putting it there. Putting more on paper is going to be a very dangerous thing if you're just doing it because somebody told you to. I could give you documents that have done wonders for me, but if you don't have a clue why they worked or why you're using what I've given you, then it's going to create a problem for you. It's just the way it is. Hosea 4:6 says that my people perish for the lack of knowledge. See, in the start of this broadcast, I talked about Revelation 18:4, where he said, come out of her, my people. And then in Hosea 4:6, he says, my people perish for the lack of knowledge. He's addressing a specific group of people. I mean, evidently there's others that aren't his people, because he addresses them by my people. That's who he's talking to. So make sure, well, I mean, you can do what you want. I'm just saying, what I've experienced, when we express things on paper in a way that's clear, has clarity, then because these barflies will they'll look for little holes to crawl through, and they're good at word trickery. So what I've found that works for me is that I'm very clear about what I'm saying. You know, I operate in the courts of heaven. That's where we operate. And if you don't understand that, not my problem. Fact is, they do understand it. They comprehend it very, very well. The only question is do we comprehend it? Have an amazing day. Like this video, share, subscribe to our channel, and remember to go over to the other channels that I mentioned, Torch Phase and Homesteading Made Easy, and have an amazing day. Until next time.